Yeah, I remember him telling Dad, he goes, we got to about 30 miles away from your town and we started seeing signs like up there, just every half mile there's signs on our way in. You're gonna get beat. Welcome to Eagle Country. And he's like, I had a bad feeling about it. And as soon as the game kicked off and you guys stuffed, he goes, it was like I couldn't wait for this game to get over at halftime.
Are you ready, big dog?
I'm ready.
Did I even tell you what we're doing?
Nope.
Welcome to Kansas QB, a podcast about growing up in rural Kansas, hosted by two former high school quarterbacks. And now, here are your manly hosts, Steve Jewell and Tyler Martin.
Yeah!
Ride 'em, cowboy.
Growing up in the cornfields of the Sunflower State, we were inseparable. Brothers from different mothers who also happen to be sisters. Our moms, not us. Decades later, he's in Iowa, and I'm in Missouri. But we'll always have Kansas, and we'll always be the QB. Howdy, folks, and welcome to the show. I'm Steve, he's Tyler, and today's episode is entitled State Champs Y2K. Hey, Tyler, did you hear from anyone about the KU episode, our last episode? Anyone give you trouble for missing anyone?
No, the only person that I think that would have given me grief was Becky, and we had her on the show, so she got to air her opinions. Anyway, I know Maddie and my dad and my mom listened to it on the way back from actually Becky's house today. So if they have questions, they'll let me know, but they said they liked the show. So I guess that means we nailed it.
I guess we did.
Broken news.
If it ain't broken, it ain't news. Breaking news is for tryhards, and we no longer have the stamina for that kind of effort. So we take stories that have already been broken and share them with the folks at home. Have you heard about this, Tyler? According to a website we have visited a lot over the last year or so, Kansas High School Football History.com, the Midway Eagles of Bendina and Denton won the state championship in the year 2000. Have you heard about this, Tyler?
Not only have I heard about it, Steve, I lived it. I was there. I bought the T-shirt.
Well, according to the article, the website, the closest game that the Eagles played that year was a 32-point victory, and that was the state title?
It was 48-16. It's written on, I think I've got one of the game balls. It was 48-16, and I thought when you put this up here, I'm like, gosh, I thought that Hanover game was close too, but looking back at it, no, it was a 36-0 drubbing. So I thought, as I look back and remember that year, though, I did think we were never more prepared for a game up until that point than we were that Hanover game with the preparation, the film work, just our plan going in, knowing what they were going to be because of, and then it just kind of amped itself up from there. Once we figured out, wow, this is fun. When you know what they're going to run, this can be really easy. So. It was good. It's a fun team to play.
It is fun as a player. As a player, when you work all week on a game plan, and then you start the game, and you're like, "Wow, this is working," and that, gives you more faith in your coaches and your teammates that, hey, this is going to work. That's great. But as a coach, Tyler, and you've coached, is there anything better than coming up with a game plan and practicing it all week, and then seeing exactly on the field what it was that you prepared for and all of your stuff working? It doesn't happen all the time, but it's a pretty great feeling, right?
Yeah, and that's what now as a coach, as you know, I take more pleasure in those guys doing well and performing on the field, whether or not we put them in the right position or not. But if it does come to play out where, hey, we knew this was going to happen, you guys were ready for it, you made their good calls on the field, and then you went and executed, that's even better than anything that we ever did while we were playing ourselves.
Couldn't agree more. Speaking of playing the game of football, we've got a couple of guests, Tyler. So we're going to motor right ahead. Did you notice we skipped the intro to Broken News? Because I wanted to get right back into this, because we may have or we may not have. There's no one really around, and there's no recording to say whether or not anyone can confirm or deny the fact that I may have forgotten to start the recording again. Anytime we have guests, it's that way. So I want to get to it faster. So Tyler, let's go right to things we remember so we can bring our guests on.
The things we remember.
We are getting older. We've already forgotten more than we ever knew, but some memories still cling to our brain parts, like Tyler to his dad and the most special hug of all time after the pair of Martins completed a perfect season during the 2000 football season. This list includes memories from our time growing up in Kansas. Let's see just how well we can remember. In the Broken News segment, we learned that Midway won it all by a lot. Tyler, what do you say we bring on a couple of guests who know just about as much about the state championship run as you do?
Like I said, like I've already said today, which also means that, yes, he did forget to hit record. I've been waiting for this episode since the podcast started.
All right. Well, before we bring him on, Tyler, is that the background noise that we're hearing? Is that your kids fighting in the background?
I'll put a stop to it as soon as I can.
No, don't. I just want to know that we can blame you and not our guests. I didn't want to have to blame our guests for those who know. Now, that's what it sounds like in a home where people play sports in the house, which I'm a big fan of. But enough ado. Let's bring on our guests today, ladies and gentlemen. Joining us today are state champions Daren Roberts and Brett Miner. Yeah, there they are. Now, I have to say, I love Tyler. Tyler, tell me what you think about this. Of course, Tyler's wearing the Midway hat and the Kansas shirt. Daren is wearing blue, so at least that's the right color, you know. And then Brett over here is actually wearing his jersey from the 2000 state championship. Now, okay.
Still fits.
It still fits, baby. That's a win. That's how you win at life. So did you steal that, or did Uncle Mark give that to you?
I bought it. I don't know where that came from.
And as far as
blame Furman for that one.
I was gonna say, as far as Jim Leatherman knows, it's still sitting in a box or a tub somewhere, right? Daren, do you have any memorabilia left over from your Midway playing days?
I have a couple jerseys, and I think that's it.
Yeah, but they're not close enough at hand to where you could just go and put them on, obviously. Otherwise, you'd be wearing it.
I don't know if it still fits, Steve.
For the other reason, it's the big biceps, right? Hard to pull over those big biceps. What about Northwest? You played at Northwest with Tyler. So did you keep any, do you have any Northwest Missouri State University apparel?
I do. I actually have a lot more Northwest Missouri State than Midway Denton. But a few jerseys, practice jerseys, footballs, signed footballs, and then I think I stole the helmet as well.
All right. Well, who's going to stop Daren Roberts walking out with a football helmet? We're going to ask some questions here. I'm going to let you guys talk. I'm just here to referee. I wasn't around. I was there for my freshman year. I was there for that awful game in the mud, the Lynn game that we went home, that Matthew Pally made the comment and almost got beaten up by Tyler on the sidelines. I remember Tyson, Rush, and I, after the game, with completely clean jerseys because we didn't play, sticking our hands in the cold water out of the sink in the locker room and it's stinging our hands because it had been so cold doing there. I remember that. Everything after that, I just kind of followed you guys online. I came to a couple games. I came to a state championship. We're going to let you guys just kind of talk about it. But before we do, I think, Tyler, you need to introduce what positions these guys played and kind of what their role was on the team because, you were there for it.
I'm sure I shouldn't say most. A lot of the people watching this or listening to this knew the positions of Daren and Brett, but Daren was our starting fullback and middle linebacker in the defense that we played. And Brett was, I like to call him my leading blocker, but he was the quick guard, which in our terms meant he played most of the time on the left side as a left guard. And then was D tackle, as we would probably call it now, a 3-eye. But you couldn't block him because he was so fast, and he got to the hole to block you. And he's a left guard that was on a state 4x1 team, if that tells you anything you need to know about him.
Well, yeah. So, Brett, tell us a little bit about because I've been a coach. I coached high school football for 10 years in that same offense. And in that time, it seemed like it was pretty easy to get people to play fullback, but not everybody wanted to play on the line. And a lot of times you're going to be the best in that offense if you got guys who can play fullback, playing on the line in the 2 guard spots. So what was that like, having so much athleticism, and then Coach Martin come up to you saying, Brett Minor, we've got this guy named Daren Roberts and this other guy named Jared Furman, and another guy named Mark Schultz, and other guys named other things. We need you to play the line because you're tougher than all of them. What was that like for you, being told to play the line when you could have played really any spot?
Oh, it really didn't matter. It all started after our freshman season. Your dad actually came up to me and he's like, the plan is that you're going to be starting nose guard your sophomore year, and you'll be backup halfback, and then eventually be the starter. I was like, oh, that's great. And so I ran a little bit of halfback in sophomore year, but in between sophomore and junior year, I guess Mark finally hit puberty, and he took off. And
Mark Schultz.
So
Mark Schultz, right?
Yeah, Mark Schultz.
Okay.
He took that spot away from me, and I mean, that was so great about our team. It did, wherever the coach wanted us, whatever contribution we can make, we were all sold in. So yeah, I loved following Tyler. Tyler always made my job easier on offense. All I had to do was get in front of a guy, and he would blow around him and nose guard. I made Daren look good because they all double teamed me, and Daren got to go in free and clear at the quarterback. So.
And then back on offense, Daren, what was it like knowing that you outweighed your left guard by about 25 pounds on offense?
Yeah, if I remember right, there was only one other person on the entire team that was heavier than me. And 8-man football is a little bit different. I mean, when you got pulling guards that run a 4.7, Brett, 40, pulling around the side, and then I'm somewhat similar than you. And then following us, we have Tyler Martin running 4.4, 4.5. We were pretty stacked in the backfield.
Yeah.
And up front.
Take me back to what would have been our Tyler and I's freshman year. I remember, and I told the story on one of our podcasts of being the middle linebacker JV guy, waiting for you and Jared to come through the line on leads, 34 power, and sometimes dives, the 32 dive, and just, getting to meet you. Not in the hole. I don't want to say in the hole because I wasn't that brave. I didn't actually step up into the hole. I just kind of waited for you to come and knock me over. But what was that like being a halfback at your size and speed with Jared Furman in front of you? That was a pretty great backfield also.
No, absolutely. But yeah, I remember the story when you were telling the story on the previous podcast, and I'm not so sure that it went down that way. You kind of make it sound like I'm a big bully coming through the line, seeking out smaller people and trying to run them over. But I do recall not necessarily getting tackled, but the celebration.
Not me. It wasn't me. I'm not that dumb.
But Matt, you and Matt.
It was Matt.
Yeah.
Matthew. Getting me in trouble. No, and listen, if anybody was a bully in that, it was Tyler. Because I remember specifically the look on Tyler's face that he looked back like, oh, they're going to get it. And I remember Jared Furman. You guys going to huddle. I don't have that many specific memories. I remember Jared Furman in the huddle kind of doing one of these. Like, he's in the huddle and he kind of leans back and kind of makes eye contact like, and then back in. I knew I was in trouble. And I was. So, yes. But great backfields. Yeah, like I said, Jared Furman, Daren Roberts. And then you make the move after Jared graduates to fullback. And that's something you played at the Division II college football level. Was that your favorite position to play out of the ones that you played, or were you more of a defensive guy?
Sure. In college, it was a little bit different because maybe one time every other game I might touch the ball.
Yeah.
I was primarily a run through the hole, go heat missile, find someone, try to hit him as hard as I can. Whereas in high school it's a little bit different, where I got to touch the ball a little bit more. But no, overall it was great. It was fun. And of course it was pretty fun with the entire team that we did have, and especially like our senior year. I mean, everything just kind of clicked into place, and it was pretty smooth sailing for the most part.
So let's talk about that. Tyler, why don't you lead this next segment? We're going to talk about the 2000 season. I wanted to ask a follow-up and see what Brett thought about Daren basically getting moved to left guard once he got to college. But we've traveled that path. So Tyler, start the 2000 football season. Did you know that it was going to be special? And then go ahead and talk to these other guys. I'd like to hear some of your guys' stories from the 2000 football season.
Well, I knew, as again, sons of the coaches as we are, the coaches always have expectations for classes, and the class of 2001, the 2000 football season, always had high expectations coming through. And for whatever reason, their sophomore, junior year, with some injuries, some illnesses, some poor timing, some bad quarterback play, to be honest, at times, they didn't quite get what I know the coaches were hoping for. But then going into that senior year, having that stacked class that they had with everybody, with the speed that they had, and then with the experience that they had, because the previous year as juniors, all we had, Luke Helmstetter was the only senior that played football. Jeff had already had his kidney issues, and he'd stopped playing. He was just playing basketball. But for the most part, we had the entire team returning that senior year for their senior year, and with the expectations, with the speed, with the guys who had played up front with Brett and Tim, and then really the only one that we had to exchange was Luke Helmstetter, who was undersized but still valuable, and we exchanged him for Adam Stevens, who was a bigger guy and get in the way of one guy. We had everybody coming back with experience pretty much all over, and athletes just all over the place, as speed kills an 8-man. So the expectation, like, we kind of all knew this is our time. We're going to win a state championship as long as we don't get in our own way. And it started right away with North Andrew. Do you guys remember how'd that game start? Did we score right away? Did something? No, we threw the screen passer, 34 power passers, and you took it down the field forever.
I did?
Yeah.
Okay.
What comes to my mind is a long pass to Furman, I think.
Well, you did win that game 52-6, so congratulations on that. Brett, what are some of your recollections of that season moving forward after that first game?
Kind of piggyback off what Tyler said. I mean, we were hungry. Like, they say there's no crying in baseball, but there's definitely crying in football, because the previous 3 years I bawled my eyes out at the end of the season, and I wasn't going to cry again unless it was tears of joy. So yeah, we were just all on the same page. Coach, he sold it to us, and we bought in, and we put in the extra work during the summer after practice. And yeah, it was odd. Like, we didn't even have to talk on the line. We just knew what each other was going to do. We'd see the defense. I knew what Tim was going to do. I knew what Eric was going to do. I knew what Nathan was going to do. It was just a good time. Only regret is I wish we played more full games instead of quarter or half games.
Absolutely.
Well, I would say as a coach, because we had a run at St. Joe Christian where we were winning by 45 a lot, and that was part of our strategy, because we would when we did our schedule, we were independent, we weren't in a conference, so we would try to work it so that we had a tough team, ranked team, and then we try to have one that wasn't. And those 45-point games, what they did is they just gave everybody a chance to heal up. They, kept the JV kids, interested and involved. But when you're going to win a state championship by, 32 points, maybe that really wasn't on your mind, getting the JV some work. You're more focused on winning a title. I don't know.
Yeah.
No.
And like Tyler said, I think Hanover was like my favorite game. Like, those guys played hard, hit hard, just real good dudes.
And even better dudes, because you beat them 36-0, right?
Yeah.
That helps.
Yeah, they were kind of far enough.
It felt close. It felt close.
It was one. They were very, very good. And how many have they run off now? Are they on like a 3 or 4 game or year state championship run? Like, they're loaded, and they're gonna stay loaded. As they were far enough away that I didn't dislike them like I disliked the other teams that were close to us. it was just a game that we had circled, knowing that they were probably going to be the toughest team on the schedule. I mean, you go first game 52-6, second game against DeKalb 54-6, the third game 64-18 against Olathe Christian, who was not very good, 58-6 St. Mary's. I mean, in all these games, Brett, you're right. Like, we didn't play much past the first quarter. Like, I remember getting to the Elwood game, which was that our first district game that year? And my dad, Coach Martin, said, you guys are going to get the first quarter. Like, for sure, you'll get to play the entire first quarter. And we went out and we got to play like the first 6 minutes and then got sat down because it was already stupid.
Daren, any games stand out to you from that season?
Well, if you're going to talk about Hanover, I'm not going to be able to add anything. I don't remember the entire season.
That's right.
Oh, did you have some head trauma, as they like to say nowadays?
Yeah, I've had a few of those through the years. Maybe that's why I can't remember very much from my high school days. But I do remember St. Mary's. We scored 7 touchdowns by 7 different people in 7 plays. Is that right?
Yeah.
And I threw one of those touchdowns to Brett Minor.
Look at that. Winning connection here. So when we talk about quarterback from that year, we need to be more specific on what we mean, because we could mean Daren or Tyler.
Yeah, I remember going in, like, I got to play, like, were you playing quarterback or you throw a halfback pass to Brett? Or a fullback toss to Brett?
It was a halfback pass, and it was a
yeah.
I think we were loaded on the right side, so Brett was eligible, and then Brett just kind of yelled around.
Yeah.
Somehow I threw it out there, and I don't even think you broke stride, Brett.
No,
right?
and then during the celebration, Nathan came down and headbutted me, and I landed on my rear end.
That's right.
Embarrassing. What a jerk. Right. All right, we're going to pause from 2000 season. I got to ask this because you guys are older. I got 2 questions. It's kind of an intermission here. Got to ask you a couple questions. First of all, Tyler and Brett. Not Tyler and Brett. Daren and Brett. When Tyler came as a freshman and basically said, hey, I'm going to be starting quarterback, coach's kid, Eric Furman, you look like an end to me, as what Tyler said. Get out there and play some men. What did you guys think about that? Were you like, who's this punk that we've been playing on the playground now for all these years? Coach's kid, think he's doing. Everybody loved Eric and whoever else could have possibly played. I don't know who else the quarterback would have been that year. Maybe it was an upperclassman.
It was you.
Also.
It was you, and you were going to be.
Well, yeah. Well, I don't think I wasn't running a 4.540. But anyway, what did you guys think about having Tyler as the freshman, coach's kid, playing quarterback? You can be honest. It's not enough time has passed. We're all friends now. What did you guys think about that?
Go ahead, Daren.
I can't say anything about that because I was starting tailback and starting cornerback, I guess you can call that.
Yeah.
As a freshman.
Yeah.
So in small schools, it's pretty normal. Todd Cottle started as a freshman, won a state championship. Tyler just didn't win the state championship his freshman year, but we came fairly close until we ran into Lynn.
Well, we ran into Lynn, a flu bug, and torn ACL, like everything that could possibly have gone wrong. That year we probably should have won a state championship. But Brett, what were your thoughts about Tyler stepping in and just being the quarterback? Were you one of the ones that was saying well, it's because he's the coach's kid, or were you like, okay, he's okay by the end of the year?
I think by this time we knew his abilities, but I will go back to junior high basketball. Our 7th grade year, your guys' 6th grade year.
Yes, let's go back there.
Before my 7th grade year, it was always common that 7th and 8th grade went to the tournament. Well, our 7th grade year, you 2 got to go to the tournament, and one of our 7th graders had to set out.
Who
so
sat
I
out?
had a bad attitude.
Who sat out?
Purdue.
Matt Purdue?
Matt Purdue. Yeah. Yeah. So I had a horrible attitude, and I remember sitting at the end of the bench during the first game, and Coach Martin calls me to the end to next to him at the bench. He's like, "You ready to change your attitude and get in there?" And I just shrugged my shoulders, and he's like, "Get back down there."
That's not good.
Now, so after that game, I left the team. I quit.
What?
And I remember walking down to the locker room, and I could see my mom out of the corner of my eye coming down the stands, just getting into Coach Martin's career. And so, yeah, I just left. And this is like a defining moment in my life. Coach Martin actually called that night and set up a meeting between me and my parents. And from that moment on, I just had the utmost respect for Coach. And yeah, that was like one of those where I could have went this way or that way. And I never wanted to disappoint him after that. So yeah.
Brett quit.
I quit. And then he let me back on the team.
Temporarily
He let
quit.
me back on the team.
He's a good man. But he did it because Tyler and I, you know why Tyler and I were on the travel team that day. It's because our dads were the coach and they want us to have free admission into the game. So we didn't have to pay to get into the door. That's the only reason we're on the team, I'm guessing. But yeah, I'm glad it led to a big life moment. That's good.
I will say this. If I know this, we're talking about the 2000 championship team, but if you would ask my dad outside of the football memories, I think some of his favorite memories of coaching period were when our classes were going through junior high playing basketball, when we had better games in practice and we were more competitive with each other just because, I mean, that's why we were good in high school. It was just like our classes playing like that. But he loved you guys and then me and Steve and just getting after it. And you remember Coach Jewell setting up how to take a charge. And if you didn't take it hard enough and they put the mats out, like you were going to like just run over kids. And if you were a weenie about it, you got on the line and ran or something. I don't know.
I've coached junior high basketball or St. Joe Christian, and I don't know that I could get away with it. I mean, with the mats I could, but I don't know if I could do it without the mats. I don't know. Well, I'm going to try that with my fourth graders next year. So Tyler steps in as a freshman, right? And you guys have a great, we had a great season. 3 years later, we beat North Andrew. By we, I mean you guys. We beat DeKalb. I did come back and watch a couple of these games whenever we had the schedule worked out so I could come see it. Olathe Christian, St. Mary's, Hanover's a big game you mentioned. Sunrise Christian, that was, Tyler, you mentioned that was Barry Sanders' brother, coached that team? That's a fun fact.
Because his dad was there, but his Barry Sanders' brother was the one that was, I think, coaching the team that year. And we didn't know what to expect. They were a new team. And all we knew was Barry Sanders' brother. And for the first time, we're going to play against some minority kids. Are these guys going to be faster than us? Are we going to be like we were like ignorant country kids? And then, hey, it's football. And our eyes were just the same, and they came up and we beat the brakes off them.
All right, so then came the Blue Valley game. And I have a specific memory from 1996. And I remember losing like 14-0. Do you remember this, Tyler? Because we were the Water Boys. And then after that, we lost 12-20. This is the 96 season and ended 6-3. We'd been 6-1, ended 6-3 because we lost those two games. Now, we'd beat them several times since then. But Tyler, did you remember that game?
One, we weren't super strong in 96. And two, we'd already beaten them the previous 3 years, 97, 98, 99, and convincingly.
Tyler, you're missing the point here. I'm trying to build drama in a season where you won every game by 45 plus.
No, because there's one thing I remember about the Blue Valley game, and it was like we actually were going to punt, and we're ahead at this point, I think 62-0. And Mark was out wide, nobody's around him, and I called for the fake, and I just grabbed it and threw it to him.
What a
when we were
jerk.
up like 62-0, and I got in trouble for that one.
Oh yeah,
it was very rude. But it was like we never got to punt. Two, we never got to work on the fake. Three, what are you gonna do? Like I think we came back onto the field to punt. Like that was the whole thing.
We did.
Like we were already off the field. We came back on the field to punt. They didn't cover it up. We'll just throw it out here, and here we go.
It was basically just like the 96 year, which was my brother Dave's senior year, but they had their punter back then was named Nate Arnold, and he also called his own fake punt during that game.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, that was because Nate was our neighbor, and we loved Nate. Kevin and I did because he was next door neighbor and he was nice to us. I don't know that we spent that much time together, but we liked him. And I remember that, and I remember Dad talking about that later, and just oh yeah, that's a classic. All right, so after Blue Valley, you had Elwood. Always fun to beat Elwood. Am I right? So that's a good time.
Again, that game, wasn't that our first district game?
It would have to be a district. There's no way. There's not enough
it
teams
was.
for it not to have been a district
It was.
game. So would that have been some of our Elwood friends? Because we always had a pretty good relationship with Elwood. Sam Mears.
Big Sam was on that team.
Would have
DJ.
BJ, Corey. Yeah, I mean, there was guys that we knew on that team, and it was one of those, at least in my mind, like, just let us get out of this thing healthy.
Right.
Please, nothing stupid happen. Nobody try to twist an ankle or do anything. And it was, again, I had a different relationship with teams, as you guys did too, with different teams than a lot of times they had the reputations for. I got along with the Elwood guys pretty well. I got along with the other guys okay. Didn't get along with Highland super great, but that's
but now we do because we're buddies. We're Donovan West. Then Burn scored the most points on you guys all season. Was that one ever in doubt, or is it one of those you're already up 68-0 and then you put the subs in and they give up 4 touchdowns?
Oh, just Burn always had incredible athletes. I mean, always good at basketball every single year, but in football they always had speedy guys. And then that year, I forget his name, but he was a big guy as well. Your buddy Tyler, what was his name?
He was still playing fullback at that point, and then he wound up.
Yeah.
He went to Butler for 2 years, and then wound up playing at TCU.
Is that Brent?
In fact, he was playing what?
That Brent Heck?
Yeah, Brent. And Brent was playing tight end at TCU when TCU beat Oklahoma at Oklahoma for like the first time ever.
So apparently Burn needed some more guys like Brent because you still beat them 68-20. So
they had a young quarterback too that played 4 years. They had some big guys. For a tiny school that Burn was, they always had dudes.
Okay, so then that brings us to a game that we lost in 98 to Lynn in that fateful game that we mentioned. We did not play them again, did we? Until 2000. And so was that, because again, I wasn't at this game. I didn't get to see it. I wasn't there. I would have felt a certain kind of way about Lynn. Tell me about the lead up to that game. Brett, do you have any specific memories of the leading up to the Lynn game and kind of the preparation going into that one?
No, I mean,
You guys are killing me.
it was definitely better weather for sure.
That's true.
Yeah.
I really wasn't worried about any game. There was one. Well, I won't get too far ahead. I'll wait until you say hope. But
That's next.
Yeah.
But the one thing I do remember about that Lynn game is their grass was almost about 8 inches tall.
yeah.
I imagine that they knew that we were a fast team and they were going to do everything they could to slow us down.
Did it work?
No.
No, I had that game circled, like hoping that we were going to play them just because of how playing out there as a freshman and fumbling twice and losing that game we got to go back. That was one that I had personally like a vendetta out there and wanted to prove something. And not that there was ever any more juice, but I might have thrown up before that game, which I did frequently, by the way, during the national anthem. I just leaned over and puke.
That's gross, huh, Daren? That's really gross.
Much like that guy down there. Yeah. But I was ready to go for that game, and it was over quick. Like the fight was out of them fast.
Yeah.
Halftime game.
I kind of imagine a Will Smith, welcome to Earth kind of thing. Were you ever like, hey, remember me, guys? Fumble guy from Tears. Okay, all right. All right, Hope. Brett, what do you got for me for Hope? Give me something, man. I'm hoping you got something for Hope.
That was probably the one and only time I had an inkling of doubt, because on our first offensive series they held us, and then boom, Daren busted one, and then I knew it was good from there.
It is interesting because again, I had the pleasure of coaching some good teams and watching some good teams play, and you could know going into a game that you're going to be better. But then all it takes is a couple stalemates, a 3 and out or something. Like, oh my goodness, maybe we're not going to win. But then if you knew you're going to win before, usually it ends up happening, and that happened in the Hope game. Brett, what else? What else do you have about the Hope game? Give me something else.
I just wanted to point out I had a defensive interception as a linebacker.
Yeah, you did.
I think that's my only one.
That was a good game.
He's usually off nose guard, but
Semifinal game was Argonia, who I know one of Dad's years winning the state championship back in the 80s, played Argonia going into the state championship. We already talked about them from 83 or 4 or something. Any memories from the Argonia game before we get to the championship?
the weather was just odd. It was a day game, and then it was like foggy and not, I wouldn't say cold, but colder. But what's funny is for the 8-man All-Star game, I roomed with Argonia's quarterback, and that's like the first thing he said to me is like, "Yeah, you tackled me several times." They were probably the biggest team we played. When you think, Daren, they were pretty big.
Yeah, I mean, if you take Olathe Christian out of it, because they had like 3 or 4 6'4", 300-pound linemen, which are worthless in 8-man football. People don't realize that. But Argonia, yeah, those guys were huge. I remember just looking up to their D linemen, and here I am, the biggest guy on our team, and I'm looking up to their D linemen. But that was probably from start to finish. I mean, it was over quick at half, like normal. But we had everything firing on all cylinders. I just remember that game. I mean, we shut them down quick. I don't even know if they had about 1 or 2 first downs, and they couldn't stop us.
Which leads us to Hanson.
It was. Well, I'm not done with Argonia yet. If we go back and the game plan playbook that we had for Hanover and how thorough that was, I would say maybe equaling it was the Argonia game, because the 3-play offense, single wing, if you want to call it that, for adapted to 8-man, Argonia ran a very old, like, spinner back type offense that had a bunch of tells, and that we were down to the minutia. If they line up here, it's going to be this. If the motion starts from here, it's going to be this. And I think Brett, you and then Stephen Christopher both had like 3 big sacks right away on plays where we know it's going here, so just take the gap. And you guys went in and sacked them. And and we returned a punt right away for a touchdown. And then like it was really off to the races. I remember, so I think their coach coached with Dad in the 8-man All-Star game when you guys were out there. Well, their coach was there too, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And I remember him telling Dad, he goes, "We got to about 30 miles away from your town and we started seeing signs like up there, just every half mile there's signs on our way in. You're going to get beat. Welcome to Eagle Country." And he's like, "I had a bad feeling about it. And as soon as the game kicked off and you guys stuffed, he goes, it was like, I couldn't wait for this game to get over at halftime."
They had a big pulling guard, and he's probably the only guy that ever rung my bell, but he only did once.
Oh, speaking of ringing bells, let's get to state championship. So I get to watch this game. I was, cheering in the stands. Go team. What was it like, first of all, line up for a state championship, and then bringing home the first one since, 1989? And so that was you guys. So, tell me about it.
Well, I mean, obviously nerves were everybody had nerves. I don't know if it was just a line of everybody out there puking before the game, but I was always first in line. But when that game kicked off, I was a little nervous because I'm pretty sure that Tyler fumbled, which we hadn't had a turnover the entire year. Luckily, it bounced right into my lap, and I ran for a first down. It was a 3rd down, too, and I can't even remember if we've punted the entire year or not, outside of coming in during cleanup time or the JV team going 3 and out, and we had to come in and do first team punt. But I just remember the first possession that we had the ball. Normally break off 20 to 30, 40-yard runs or Tyler break one for a touchdown. I mean, it was 5, 10, 3, 5, 10-yard plays every time, which was a lot tougher than normal for us.
No, it was just like Daren said, like when I fumbled on the first possession, which like we hadn't, that was one of the craziest stats I think of all time. We were plus 54 in turnover margin that year. The only turnover that and it wasn't like some balls could have been picked and they got dropped, or I think we fumbled like 4 times and we recovered them. But the only turnover that we lost the entire season was a quarterback center exchange in a JV time of a game we were killing somebody. Other than that, we were plus 54 on the season. And then so when we fumbled on that first drive, I'm like, oh no. And then when it literally bounced to Daren, and he picked it up and ran for 13 yards and a first down. It was kind of like, okay, things are still going to go our way. That field was maybe the worst field we played on the entire year.
Wait, did we play decab at decab? Because that was probably worse.
They're terrible. We call it the Dust Bowl. It never has any grass.
No, we played them at home. We played them at home that year.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is one of the things that struck me, though, because we played our state championship games over in Missouri in the Edward Jones Dome. So it was the same place where at the time the St. Louis Rams played. And I remember coming to watch you guys play, and I was like, I feel like Kansas, doesn't care enough about 8-man football if this is where we're playing. It should have been at like KU or K-State or I don't know. I mean, what was up with that field?
Well, it's still, and I don't know if it's still that way, but back then they played every state championship, and maybe 8-man was a week early, but I think back then every state championship game was played on the same day, just at different venues. So most of them were held at the D2 schools around the state. And back then, state basketball was the same way. I don't know if it still is, where 1A boys and girls went here, 2A boys and girls went there. And you're right, in Missouri it's different. In Iowa, they play all of them in the dome for the semifinals and finals. So, yeah, the field was awful. But after we got rolling and we scored, and then got a stop, and then it was kind of like, okay, this is going to be business as usual. The only problem that we ran into was right before halftime. I think they we gave up a drive on a couple third downs that we shouldn't have.
Yeah, they had this number two, the little receiver, and he probably wasn't 130 pounds soaking wet, but he had a neck roll and he looked good. And but he was a baller. I mean, he was a player all over the field, and he got a little bit loose. I can't remember who he got behind, but they kind of scored that touchdown right going into half, and I think we were a little bit nervous. But that quickly changed here in the third quarter.
It was about to be out of reach. Like we were up like 24-6 maybe, and it's okay. Let's see if maybe we'll score again and make it 30. And then they scored to make it 24, or was it 24-12 or 30? Whatever it was. He's still was that Huseman? He's still the football coach out at one of the 8-man schools. I don't know if it's whoever Hanston consolidated with or Jetmore consolidated with, but he's been a head coach in Kansas for a while now.
All right, guys. So state championship, last chance. Tell me a story or something from that year, from the state championship game or any other time before I have a couple final questions to ask before we let you go here. But Tyler, we'll start with you.
I've got two things about that year. One earlier in the year and then one about the state championship game. So earlier in the year, like we had only ran our 3-5 defense the entire year. And I remember Dad just being like one time, hey, and he signals in, like, hey, run a 4-1. And we'd never practiced it. We'd never done anything just to see how we'd handle it. And like we just kind of looked at each other or 4-2, and Brett went to linebacker and Daren moved up, and we just kind of all went to a spot that we thought, okay, we'll just play here. And we stuffed him, and he thought that was funny. And then the state championship game, we had never once practiced anything in the I formation, and not even practiced it to my recollection. And we put Darren, we put you at halfback and Mark at fullback, and we just went basically lead right, lead left, lead right, lead left, and then power pass or fake pass over the top for a touchdown without ever having practiced it, because they were kind of stuffing our pullers and getting into where we wanted to get to. And it was just one of those, wow, we can do whatever we want. How come we didn't do this a long time ago?
And before we go, just that, because talking about Daren getting the ball left, getting the ball right, something you mentioned earlier, Daren, I want you to know that I came to watch you and Tyler at Northwest to cheer for you guys. I didn't do it as much as I probably should have, but I did come. And I remember watching a game, and like I said, Daren, you're playing fullback. I was yelling at Coach Churchma from the stands. I don't know if it had anything to do with him, but I was yelling like, "Give the ball to Roberts!" Like, you just look so like big and strong and fast, and I was like, why are they not giving him the ball? This makes no sense. And then Tyler is getting like subbed out. I'm like, why are you subbing out Martin? Oh man! But at least Mark Martin knew what to do with Daren Roberts and Tyler Martin. At least, even if the folks at Northwest didn't. But anyway, what about you, Brett? Got any stories from that season?
From that season,
Any season, any story, Brett. This is I want to hear from Brett Miner.
Okay. I remember freshman year during practice, if I didn't leave practice with a headache, then I did something wrong. Because whenever coach would say half speed, I guess Jeremy Blanton and Aaron Albers never heard that. So I was always getting killed by them. And then
half speed's so subjective. Half speed, like what is half speed? I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah. And then I remember my junior year, for whatever reason, I got to run the ball. And as soon as I crossed the end zone, I spiked it. I didn't even know I did it till after I did it. And I just looked back and coach is shaking his head. And then state game, I remember one of the 318 strong sweeps. I think I blocked 4 guys because Nathan kicked his guy inside. I caught a linebacker, and then a guy got on Tyler. I knocked him off, and then another guy got him. I knocked him off, and then Tyler was off to score, I think, that time.
And I've got to say, that was not uncommon for Brett to block 2 or 3 people on every play. And I remember there's a couple times you'd hit one, run through him with one arm, run through with another arm, and there's a couple. And I don't know what game it was. You just kind of looked at a guy and like put your hand up, like don't even try to touch him. And the kid kind of just stopped, and I just went right around the other side.
Well, and I have to say this, guys. Your former classmate, my brother Kevin. It seemed like Uncle Mark, Tyler's dad. It was like his mission to like toughen Kevin up. Like that was like I watched him in practice, and I'm like, Coach Martin talks to Kevin a little differently than he talks to somebody. Like always tell him, get up faster. I just remember him yelling at him to get up, right? And Dad was like, yeah, listen to the coach. And you guys didn't really get to see the fruit that came from that, because I have some specific memories. Same relationship, basically, Tyler to you guys was me to Kevin, because I played quarterback at St. Joe Christian, and Kevin started at guard his junior year, but then by the end of his junior year was moved to fullback. And what we did is I would just roll out behind him, and he would block everybody. And he had a couple games, same thing, and I have the film to prove it, where he would block multiple guys. I mean, he was 6'2", 205 pounds. You guys didn't need him, clearly. But when you talk about blocking multiple guys, Kevin was kind of the same way. He got fast. He was really strong, really tough. I wish you guys would have had a chance to play with him. But Daren, what are some more memories you had football midway?
Well, first of all, I think it would have been amazing if you and Kevin were on the team with us. What kind of team that would have been? The whole time I'm just thinking of who would actually be subbing in and out during that game, because I think we would have a few. The other part is probably going back to my freshman year. I think we did a 5-1 defense.
5-1 attack.
I was lining up. Mm-hmm. I was lining up as nose tackle at that time, and I don't know what it was, but Brett, your brother, was in there as well, next to me, lined up, and somehow it got back to Coach Jewell that I was not lined up where I was supposed to be. So this is right before halftime. We go into halftime, and of course we go down to the dungeon, our locker room, and I spend the next 20 minutes with Mark Jewell chewing my butt up one side and down the other the entire halftime. And come third quarter, I'm almost in tears at this point. And then it wasn't until the Sunday night, I don't know where we watched the game film, I was where I was supposed to be the entire time. So, still mad at your brother.
Thanks, Ron.
Oh my goodness! You know what's funny though, Daren? That when I assisted Dad for 10 years, and when I did, a lot of times my number one job was kind of pulling him back and saying, "We need to play, Coach. Coach, we need to play. We can't change it. Stop yelling at the refs. We need to play." Or when he would like go after a kid, like, "All right, Dad, he gets it. What else you got?" Because he could get focused in. He kind of did that. Any other thoughts before I ask you guys my parting couple of questions? Anything else we need to know about that season or any other season? Anything that comes to mind?
I got a few things to say about the coaches.
All right, go for it. Make it happen.
Well, kind of off the field, it was great having Coach Jewell as a shop coach or shop teacher during the season because you didn't do any classwork. You watched film. And then after the season, if you came in and you really didn't want to do anything, you just got him talking about football. And before you know it, the bell was ringing. And then Coach Martin, I just loved chalk talks with him because, as soon as those goosebumps started on his arm, that's all I needed to get fired up.
Yeah, that's one thing that we were very lucky from a very young age, even all the way back to Auburn, Nebraska tournaments, being blessed with great coaches. Both your dads, Spangler, Jones, and Leatherman, all the way through high school. And then for me and Tyler, both into college with Churchma, Bostwick, Sabota, Tatum, just so many great coaches through the years. So it's been a blessing.
Definitely.
Well said. All right. I've been dying to ask these questions. All right. We pretended this was about the state championship just to get you guys on. All right. So, first question. Was there actually a fight of 1995? Did that actually happen, or is that just lore that Tyler and I remembered coming out of elementary school?
I don't remember it.
I wasn't there. Like, we left Midway halfway through third grade, and I came back halfway through fifth grade, all because I was scared of Mrs. Bevis.
Oh, man. We've talked about this. Brett, because we were scared of her, too. We were terrified of her. Wherever Nathan is listening to this, hopefully, we were terrified of her. And then we had her, and we realized, oh, she's kind of awesome. So you really missed out, Brett. You missed out. She was a fantastic teacher. Oh, very good. So there wasn't a fight, Tyler. This has all been made up. But
it was a giant dog pile of 1995.
maybe we're mischaracterizing it. Now, I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing, because a lot of our things that we remember, like we're discovering that maybe they didn't ever actually happen. Which, welcome to remembering elementary times. Tyler and I remember that a lot of times we played sixth grade versus everybody else in football on the playground. Is that at least something that you guys remember, where it'd be, you guys, it'd be, Eric and Daren and Brett and Tim and Mark, and you guys would all play against me and Tyler and anybody else we could scrounge up out there at recess at Midway?
Well, I spent 90% of my time on the wall during recess. So I don't recall much recess in sixth grade.
Well, and standing next to Brett was me most of the time, but I do remember it a little bit. I remember it more than anything of being KU fans versus K-State fans. But I think that might have been only when we were at recess by ourselves. Can't remember if you guys were involved in that too, but it was basically just me and Kevin, and then the K-State fans as everybody else.
Yeah, our class was similar because Tyler and I and Matt were KU fans, and I know that Adams, or at least Adam Mathias, was a huge Chad May fan, K-State fan, and whatever. So last question then. We talked last episode about KU. Daren, was it you? I know you took Kevin to a KU game back when Greg Ostertag was still playing. Was it you that the picture was taken of standing next to Greg Ostertag? I can't remember now, but that's, for some reason, I associate that with you. Did you meet Greg Ostertag and stand next to him?
I don't think so.
Feels like
I
a no.
don't think that was me. Granted, I've been to a million KU games, luckily enough, throughout all the years, but my grandpa was always in a huge hurry to beat the traffic, so we never got to stick around and say hi. Yeah. Okay, so here's another thing. You took him one time, and I remember waking up the next morning, and he was chowing down on power bars, these chocolate power bars that I guess had been handed out at the game. And I'll never forget, because then when Dad got up and saw, he was really strict with our diet, and so he saw that, and Kevin was like, "They're healthy. The Roberts gave them to me," or something like that. And he was like on his second or third one, and Dad was like, "No, it's a candy bar." And I remember getting in trouble and that was your fault. You did that to him. So I think we each had about 20 in our pockets.
Very good. All right, ladies and gentlemen, Daren and Brett specifically, thank you so much for joining us today. A lot of fun talking about old times. We're going to talk occasionally about other things relating to, either might be football, might be elementary stuff. Would you guys, now that I have your phone numbers, would you be willing to, let us just call you out of the blue every now and then if we need verification? Because clearly some of the things we've already told on this podcast were complete lies because you guys had no idea what we were talking about.
Well, I feel like we need a stage to be able to defend ourselves. There's been a couple podcasts where I felt it's been a little unfair because we didn't have a voice.
And for those, you still may not get a phone call when Tyler and I need a bad guy. You still may not get a phone call because it's our podcast. But when we're okay with being wrong, we'll give you a call if that's okay.
All right, fair.
Fair enough, he says. Well, that does it for things that we remember. And as we reach the 68-6 drubbing of the Blue Valley Randolph football team in the 2000 football season of life, we're just thrilled that we remembered something. Kansas QB is a production of the Jewel Media Podcasting Network. And before we go, we want to thank Tracy of Tracy Lindley Voiceovers for the Way Too Professional audio. And of course, I would like to thank Daren, Brett, and Tyler for clearing time in their busy schedules to talk about state champs Y2K.
Yeah, I needed the last Rock Chalk episode to feel good about Kansas basketball. And this one, I haven't felt as young as I remember thinking about these games and seeing these guys, remembering running behind them. And this is as young as I felt in a long time until I try to stand up out of this chair, probably.
You look young, Tyler. Well, that's enough of that. For Tyler, I'm Steve wishing you big fun in your small town. Sorry, guys, that went a little long. Hopefully, you didn't have any big plans that you had to ignore.
That was just part one, right?